wise old whale. Tell me the story about the big metallic monsters again.
Well then, baby fish, it all began when I was about your age. Once upon a time, long, long ago, before the 1960s, there were two sea realms, the shallow kingdom and the deep kingdom. These two domains lived in harmony and prosperity, minding their own fishiness. And then, everything changed. Evil hordes of metal monsters poured from the terrestrial realm into the sea, casting their nets of destruction behind them. At first, the monsters were content in feasting on the inhabitants of the upper kingdom, for their tentacles could only spread that far, and for many generations I watched as my friends from up above were being abducted. But over the course of many years, the monsters ruthlessly slaughtered the fish from the upper kingdom, indiscriminately harvesting everything that crossed their path. And I watched, helplessly, as the dead bodies of the unwanted fish were thrown back into the sea, raining as corpses into the lower domain. Now, the lower kingdom, whilst this was happening, continued with their lives, ignorant of the dangers lurking up above.
Oh, that's terrible. Tell me what happened next.
I remember that day as if it was yesterday. It was a cold Friday in March, around 50 years ago, and there I was, on one of my regular visits to the lower kingdom, when suddenly my tail got caught in a net. Fortunately, after a short struggle, I managed to escape from the grasp of the metallic beast, but not without getting this old scar on my back. That day marked the start of the siege on the lower domain. This troubled me, as I knew that the inhabitants of the deep, despite their long lives, grew slowly and left fewer offspring compared to their neighbors from up above. And hence I knew that soon they would be gone forever, if the metal monsters don't realize their crime and the impacts of their mindless actions. So one day, on one of my migrations to seek help, I met some creatures that call themselves scientists. Soon, I learned that they were not like the other metallic beasts, as they were not using nets, but strange instruments that probed into the depths of our kingdoms. I recall the first time I ever talked to one of those creatures. Her name was Zan.
How have fishing practices changed over the years?
So I guess way back at the beginning, people used to fish with kind of sailing boats and things, and obviously as technology's progressed with the steam engines, that kind of thing, we've moved away from kind of using fishing rods and lines onto using fishing nets, more and more powerful fishing boats. As the boats have got bigger, the gears have got bigger, so we're able to catch more fish, stay at sea for longer periods of time. So that's basically meant that the impact we can have on the sea essentially has increased quite dramatically over the last 100 years or so.
How have these changes affected fish stocks in deep sea?
So as we've kind of increased our impacts in the oceans, we have essentially gone through serial depletions of different stocks. So we fish in shallow waters, and then we've tended to overfish those. And then in order to replace those, to maintain catches, to maintain the commercial value of the fishery, we've moved on to different stocks, and that means either moving further offshore or it means moving into deeper depths. So over the past 50 years there's been this trend of kind of basically moving away from the depleted coastal areas and into deeper water.
What do you think the future is for deep sea fishing?
Honestly, I don't think it's sustainable. I think that the deep sea environment is... The fish that live in the deep sea are essentially characterised by species that live for a very long time. They take a very long time to mature. They generally can't withstand fishing pressure in the same way that coastal species can, which can reproduce quickly in large numbers and then have large numbers of offspring. So deep sea stocks, if we do start targeting them, they tend to decline very rapidly, and they don't have the productivity to recover quickly. So as we move into these fragile ecosystems, there's definitely the potential to do quite a lot of damage to deep sea fish stocks in general.
How did you know there's damage being done to the deep sea?
Because we can see it. I mean, accessing the deep sea is a really difficult thing to do, so long-term data sets are few and far between. But the places where we do have long-term data, we've actually been able to see quite major declines in the abundances of commercially targeted and bycatch fish species over quite a short period of time, 20 years, through the development of the fishery itself. We can also put down cameras to the seafloor where there's been fishing activity, and we can actually see where the trawls have gone through and damaged fragile habitats like cold water corals, for example. And again, these are species that will take thousands of years to recover. So we can actually see.
Can you tell me more about these databases you use?
Yeah, so one of the ways where we can get a lot of data on this is by putting in, taking all the data from the surveys that we do and putting them into online resources. So FishBase, for example, is one database where all kinds of life history, species identification data and growth data and all these kinds of things are accessible, which means that if you just want to do a kind of large-scale global survey, for example, you can very easily access large quantities of high-quality data, usually, quite quickly.
But like Zan, there were many others, which soon came to realize the importance of our kingdoms. And with time, some of the metal monsters learned to use nets with bigger and special holes to minimize the number of bycatched friends. They set protected areas where no monsters could go, and they made sure to spare the young by implementing what they call landing sizes, as well as only catching certain quotas of fish to make sure there will be enough grown-up fish to have families of their own. And that, little fish, is what is called sustainable fishing. Those were the worst days our kingdoms went through, but now we can hope that things will get better, as the humanoid fish now know how important our kingdoms are and are working towards restoring their former glory.